And welcome in to PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me on these Thursday night forays into the world of sports is Gary Stein. Gary, how are you?
I'm sailing along, Stan. Can't wait to get together with you.
All right, that's apropos for tonight. The gentleman smiling is the president of African Diaspora Maritime, known as ADM. We're going to explain why he's smiling in just a minute. But first, as you know, I always have to talk about the Costas Inn. Maybe I'll go out on one of Charles Kithcart's boats and do some crabbing and bring back some crabs for them to steam over to Costas Inn. All kidding aside, Costas Inn, everybody knows it as the place, the preeminent place for steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup. They've got specials every night of the week. It's just a fantastic place. During the pandemic, they really raised their game in curbside, or as we used to call it, us old timers, takeout. If you go online to costasin.com, you can order your food, pay for your food online, and when you stop by the Costas Inn, you don't even have to get out of your car. Everything's packed immaculately. The Costas Inn, we always thank them for their sponsorship. Without them, we couldn't put these shows on. Joining us now is Charles Kithcart. And Charles, I met you, I think the date was actually more like September 7th, so it might be 5 or 6 weeks since I met you. Thanks to the Nevins Nevins PR people, you were there to make a presentation to get this public. Why don't you tell our viewers out there what African Diaspora Maritime, ADM, is all about?
Thank you very much. It's great to be on the press box. African Diaspora Maritime is going to be effectively the Jamaican bobsled team based in Baltimore. The difference is, instead of bobsledding, we're on sailboats, and we're going to teach the math and science behind high-tech sailing and the history of the Black Mariner. We're going to have an integrated crew, but we're going to feature Black sailors. And what this is going to do for Baltimore, it's going to motivate a huge swath of our city to get excited about some positive news, something that's proactive so the kids can learn, and even the adults, and then we can grow. We can feature Baltimore as our home port, and then as we're out sailing and teaching that history online, people can download it and learn something, and they can be excited.
I appreciate your cutting to the chase and condensing that nicely, Charles. Why Baltimore? Are you from Baltimore, or is it its proximity to the Chesapeake Bay? What is it about Baltimore?
I lived in Maryland when I was a boy. So my father was the base commander at Fort Holabird, and we spent a bunch of time in Baltimore. It's right next door. I'm in Dundalk, Baltimore. Okay. So I went to Dundalk Elementary, and my biggest disappointment was when Boog Powell and Paul Blair and all those Al Bunbury, they were going to have Vida Blue pitch. So we came, I had my ball, and they said, well, Vida's not pitching, it's Joe Jones. And I said, okay.
That was your biggest disappointment. All right. So you've lived the Baltimore experience. Gary, you got any questions for Charles? This is a fascinating topic, and one I know we'll dig into.
I got a boatload of questions. Get it, Stan?
Yeah, I got it.
So Charles, just give us your background on sailing. I know you said that you grew up in Maryland as a boy. Like, did you sail? How did you learn to sail? What's your connection there?
I got connected. So my family retired to Ohio after our time in Baltimore. And the Great Lakes are there. I had plenty of friends with boats, but my main thing was in Florida. When I was in the Marine Corps from 83 to 87, I got out to finish my education in Florida and really got hard and heavy into boats. And I think what happened is, with the Marine Corps, I was bigger, faster, stronger, quicker, more disciplined. And I was outshining all the competition. And they said, this guy he's got it. So I went up to Newport, Rhode Island, and a couple summers, summering in Newport. It sounds like I was rich. I wasn't. I was working.
I've been there. Beautiful.
It's gorgeous. The summer cottages are bigger than banks. So
is that back when the Jazz Festival was there?
The jazz festival was there, and I actually got invited to the Gatsby Ball, which I think the tickets were $400. So some blue blood saw me on the boats coming off, and he says, "Do you have tickets? Do you have a evening wear?" I said, "Yes, sir." And so he gave me a couple tickets. I got a beautiful date and went to Marble House for the Gatsby Ball. Apparently,
Wow.
those tickets in perpetuity. So I'm gonna go back soon.
Wow.
But the idea of sailing is it's still an athletic endeavor. And so these new boats are foiling monohulls, and they are an athlete's boat. This isn't Thurston Howell's boat. This is a defensive backs. So they've got helmets, flak jackets, hydrostatic jackets. The boat foils above the water, and my speed was 15 knots. We were going fast. These boats are going 40 miles an hour.
Wow. So, when you think of sailing, when just a regular person thinks of sailing, the first thing that they're probably going to think about is a rich person, like on a yacht or whatever, as far as the U.S. Cup is concerned, sailing the blue ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, etc. So how are you going to kind of change that narrative and, like you say, make it accessible and inclusive to all?
So the way you do it is you have to have a marketing idea first. And so I was telling everybody in a video that you can see from 2012 that you can make the money selling hats, jackets, and t-shirts. So any rich person that would look at me, they'd look and they kind of want to examine me or check my forehead to see if I had a temperature. Then in 2018, the Nigerians, on the heels of the movie Black Panther, had a fashion reveal. So in the fashion reveal, they sold 3 million jerseys at $90 a piece in 3.5 minutes online.
It's
And
$270 million.
that's $270 million. So guess what? Black Panther #2 comes out November 11th or 12th, and ADM has their uniform reveal the first or second week in December. So we're going to mimic the same thing, and we're going to make that money. As a matter of fact, my jerseys are $95.
Well, I sat there, Charles, at your discussion at the Reginald Lewis Museum, and I was blown away when I heard you cite that figure, and that is sort of how you plan to raise the capital necessary to get in this game. Does that preclude, and I don't know whether you have an exact amount you think you'll raise by a reveal, will you look for sponsorships or partners in this endeavor as well?
Absolutely. We're going to have a simultaneous situation. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, I go down to Quantico, Virginia to meet a lot of the Defense Department's contractors. So they're going to come on providing logistics support. There's a company called CyberCon Racing, and they're going to provide a lot of technical support in designing and building the boat. So we're partnering in with people, but you still have to raise money. Also, people are going to come and say, "I like this project," and it's giving Baltimore and the United States of America a moment where we can be happy. So they're going to come on board. They just want to see, how do you run this? How does this thing feel? And when they see it and like it, they'll come on board.
It's really fascinating. Gary?
So let me use the Black Panther Nigerian soccer team as an analogy for a second, Charles, because that's what you did, okay? So you talk about the reveal that the Nigerian team had.
Correct.
So one thing about World Cup soccer, like you say, there's a global audience for World Cup soccer. And that probably had a lot to do with the fact that they sold all those shirts in 3 minutes and made $270 million. But, where's the global audience for your reveal? In other words, how are you going to get people to pay attention to your reveal like the Nigerian soccer team did to theirs?
So there's a couple of different things. I use the Nigerians as the example because that's what happened. But then we'll go to the Jamaican bobsled team to talk about a new idea that gets more attention than the established idea. So we ask ourselves, how come they didn't make a movie about the Swedish bobsled team or the Switzerland bobsled team or from Sweden or Norway? Because it's standard and known. So now you have African Diaspora Maritime in the yacht racing world, and it's not standard and it is unknown. So we'll immediately become popular, just like the Jamaican bobsled team. That's why they made the movie about them.
Yeah. Can I ask you about your name, African Diaspora Maritime?
Sure.
Why that? To explain what that means and
What
what
that-
it means to you.
Sure. The word diaspora, it just simply means that you're not in your home country / continent. So if you're
Right.
Irish or Greek or Roman, Italy, Italian, you're from the Italian diaspora if you're here in the States. And so you'll see a lot of magazines and newspapers that say Greek diaspora or French diaspora. So the word diaspora is just something that we don't hear all the time. And so I'm part of the African diaspora. And so maritime obviously is because we're racing. So if you look over my shoulder and see the red, yellow, and green, those are the traditional Pan-African colors, and then the blue is maritime. So more or less, it's just like if the Boston Celtics had the little Irish guy with the corncob pipe and a shillelagh and shamrocks on his vest, and we say, wow, I like it, I'm Irish. Or if you look at the Minnesota Vikings and you see the horned helmet and the blonde ponytail coming down, you're like, wow, I'm from Scandinavia, I love the Minnesota Vikings. Same thing.
Mhm.
Now I want to ask you a question about, I do like your logo with this.
Thank you.
It looks
the
good.
arrows going around and around the African continent.
Sure.
Who is designing your uniform that you're going to reveal? Who is designing it, and what credibility do they have that they're going to come up with something that you hit a home run with?
Well, the uniforms were actually on display at the event, and
Okay.
the cameraman just did a cursory over them. So we looked at them, they were already made, and then we
Okay.
said, well, we're going to change a few things. So we've already have a manufacturer, they've already been designed, and if you go online, you can go to our website and see what they prospectively will look like, and they look good. And it's not just because they're my children and I say my children look good. I've gotten independent people say they look good.
Who did design them? Did you design them, Charles?
Well, I've had help with a lot of different people. Usually what you do is you come up with a general idea, and then you have someone who's in the design field hone it in, tighten it up, and make it perfect it.
Yeah. It's all very interesting. Gary?
Yeah. So Charles, look, I'm not going to pretend to be, an aficionado of sailing. I don't know the circuit like I know the NFL, put it that way, right? So explain, like, what is the circuit? There are professional sailors. I understand that. I think Baltimore has a history with them, but like, what's the competition?
So what happens is that all over, let's use golf as an analogy. So the golf championship is held and the PGA players come in to play it all over America. So with boats, you take the boats to where the championships are. So there's the Opera Cup, there's Block Island Sailing Week, there's they have the race week down in Florida. If you go to the Great Lakes, they have race weeks up there. You go to California, they have the Congressional Cup. So you're going to have all kinds of racing all over the place. And then we'll have specific racing in the Chesapeake Bay. So it's just like a league that's mobile, and they have beautiful racing. They have the Rolex championships for maxi yachts in Costa Smeralda in Italy. It's gorgeous. So it's just the boats go from place to place to place, and they race. For the America's Cup, the winning team hosts the America's Cup. New Zealand is the winning team. They're hosting it in Spain because New Zealand is just 4 million people. They need more people and they need more economy. So Barcelona is where this one's going to be.
So again, Stan, let me just ask one thing. So again, using your analogy with the Nigerian national team in the World Cup, what races is it your goal to field a team to race internationally, nationally? Like what is the goal of African Diaspora Maritime?
Understood. So what happens is you bring in the sailors specifically for the America's Cup. They're going to go down south and train. But we're going to have 2 boats in Baltimore, and these are going to be our flagship boats. One's going to be a traditional old wooden boat, and one's going to be a new high-tech boat. We'll have an auxiliary crew in Baltimore so the kids can come on field trips. We'll be open on the weekends, and people can come down, and we'll have parts of the boat, laminates, carbon fiber, resins, and polymers, so you can see what the new ones are made out of. And then we'll show you the old wooden planks and the things of the old boat. And we'll have those boats going out racing, and you'll see us put our logos up on there and fly spinnakers and have a definite presence. Also, with the history of the Black Mariner, we have the authors that are going to come in and give author talks. Then with the design and build of a boat, the designers and builders are going to give talks and webinars and seminars and teach-ins. And so this is going to raise our standard mathematical, scientific, and chemical knowledge. And our grade scores are going to go up in Baltimore City. And this is going to be a template for the United States.
Charles, I want to move on to the building, the actual building of the boat. You start to raise the money. Where in Baltimore do you have a place lined up where you will build the boat?
There's a couple places that I've been looking at, and I've been on, there's a website called LoopNet, and it's got all the warehouses. And so I've looked and I said, does this one have a high enough ceiling? Is it wide enough, big enough? Could I have a partition so people can watch from the other side? Now, so this is how this is going to work. If the actual builder of our boat says, Charles, we don't have enough time, it's too compressed, then we can build the high-tech boat and the wooden boat and have a double build in Baltimore. And then those will be our flagship boats. And then the next cycle for the America's Cup, we'll have enough time. But we'll be here for several cycles of the America's Cup. And I think what you're going to like about it is that we're going to engage with the young people. So you saw the adventures of Captain Balti Kids. So he's got the Napoleon hat on and the uniform, and he's going to have a crew of about 5 people. They're looking for treasure in the inner harbor. And it's going to be a teaching tool when he uses a map, a telescope, a compass, and any other maritime. He's going to shoot an azimuth with a sextant. And we're going to teach. And all of a sudden, our scores grow up in math and science. The reading goes up in the history of the Black Mariner. And we start to change the dynamic in Baltimore, where we're hearing bad news, and we're going to start to supplant that and change the trajectory of the news.
The youngsters in Baltimore, what is the right age to start somebody into a life of understanding how to sail? I mean, is it too late if it's in your 20s? Can they learn at 12, 13 years old?
So learning in and of itself is an extraordinary thing. So I try to learn something new all the time, and I think you can see there's some gray hairs in there. And
I don't have any.
Right. So what we have to do is we have to admit to ourselves, even as adults, that we can learn. And then you start to find out that learning is interesting and fun. And if we package the design of the boat and the building of the boat so that people can enjoy it, and we put it online and we have a teach-in, webinars and seminars, and then we actually invite people down to that, they'll realize that this is fun. Then when we have the Chesapeake Cup, if we can do it off of Fort McHenry and have a 300-yard race course and have smaller boats and have a picnic and have fun and bring everybody. And like I said, this is integrated. And the reason we're integrating it is because we've got enough strife in this country. And what we have to do is we have to be able to look across and say, let's work together. Let's have some fun together. It's great to celebrate the history of the Black Mariner. You can see that movie Red Tails was about the guys that were the first pilots, and the Air Force came out with the red tail uniforms. And one of our chairmen, Admiral Samuel Gravely, was the first Black admiral in America. I mean, we salute that. So this is something that you can enjoy, and we're not going to say, no, you can't come. We're saying, yes, it's open for everyone.
Charles, have you come across anybody who says to you, you are absolutely crazy for doing this? Have you come across anybody that has sort of like said, this is preposterous, this is never going to work?
Sure. I mean, I think it's great that we would imagine that things can't work. I can imagine when they talked about going to the moon, and somebody at the Defense Department and the Budget Department says, well, no, we can't go to the moon. Well, why not? Well, because we haven't gone before. So that means you can't do anything if you've never done it before. So you actually have to step out and climb Mount Everest for the first time.
You had mentioned a couple, God, I have so many questions, Stan. We could do this for 2 hours.
Yep.
I'll come back.
We'll have you come back on. When is the uniform reveal before Gary asked a couple more?
Probably the first week in December, right around then.
We'll have you on shortly after that.
I'd
Okay.
love to.
Okay.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Gary.
You had mentioned a couple times already, Charles, the history of the African mariner. I know you just talked about that, Admiral, a moment ago, but what is the history of the African mariner?
Well, we can say African, and so that means when they first got brought to the United States in bondage, they had maritime trade. So there's a couple of great books called The Waterman's Song. There's a book called the Umbala, The Adventures of a Negro Sea Captain. There's a great book called The Gentleman of Color. And this guy owned the sail loft in Philadelphia during enslavement, and he was wealthy, James Thornton. So you can go up and down the coast and West Coast, and you're going to see I can stack up the books on the history of the Black Mariner to almost my knee. Then there's several documentaries and about 3 or 4 movies. So there's a wide body of knowledge on this. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Charles Foy spoke on video at the event, and he's got a whole database, and he's come out and said that that was the #2 job after laborer was married for African Americans.
There were also black pirates, weren't there, Charles?
You know, it's funny. There's a terrible corny book I have called Black Pirate, and so they gave me extra long mutton chop sideburns, and he's got a good looking on his arm, and I'm like, this is a little bit corny, but yes.
Yeah, there were.
Any field that is available, you're going to see that there was black faces participating. Even if you just looked out west and looked at some of the cowboys and rodeos, there's a lot of black. And even here, we're in a horse racing state. A lot of the jockeys were black, and then somehow that faded away. So sometimes learning these things, it expands the mind of people who would look and otherwise think that their job prospects are truncated. They're not. They're wide open.
Charles, a couple of times you've mentioned the kids, right? Teaching the kids the history and math, all that goes into the building and the sailing and math and science, etc. So my question is, and I know this is going to be online, but do you have, and you want it to affect Baltimore City, do you have to have a relationship with the Baltimore City public school system in order to access the kids? Or how are you going to access the kids?
So it's a dual deal. One thing, we know that when the Jamaican bobsled team was racing in Calgary, it was so exciting, people watched and the ratings went up. So our ratings are going to drive the America's Cup, and people are going to tune into our website where we have it. I've also reached out to the Baltimore City and County school districts, and we're going to start the dialogue, and they can plug these things into their science class, to their history class, anytime they want. And we want to just build a collegial relationship with everybody.
I want to ask you one more thing about sponsorships and things of that nature.
Sure.
Are there rules governing in the America's Cup putting signage on your sails or on the sides of your boat? I mean, are there ways that give a value to a potential sponsor, Charles?
Well, it was funny. When I worked for America Cubed in '92, Bill Koch, and that's the Koch brother that got kicked out of the family,
Right.
given $600 million to go. He didn't want anything on the boat, so he had no logos, no nothing, and Corvette was one of our sponsors. And believe me, we were zipping all over town with those Corvettes. That almost got me in trouble, but I survived it.
I'll bet.
With sponsors, what you want is you want a psychological and social and cultural fit. So we want people to pay attention to their health. Obviously, the rules for the America's Cup, they don't allow tobacco products. And I believe they've stopped with the alcohol unless it's a title sponsor for a champagne that you're going to celebrate with. But what we're going to do is we're going to be thoughtful about how we deal with sponsors. And we're also going to honor the military branches. Okay, I'm a veteran. I served in the Marine Corps. So we know the story about Red Tails. I think George Lucas made a movie about that. It wouldn't be much for us to put some of those service related patches and logos on the boat somewhere in a tasteful way. And when I go down to Quantico tomorrow, we're going to have that conversation. But certainly we're going to reach out and have some sponsors. And typically, the America's Cup teams have a team watch, and so we're working on that now.
The high-tech nature of the boats that you showed the day of your presentation down at the Reginald Lewis Museum.
Yes.
Those boats are so, they don't even look like what Gary's imagining when I use the term boat. They're so different. Have those style boats made what you're trying to do easier, less expensive, or has it raised the game due to the technology involved to where it's even more expensive?
So this is the big conversation that everybody that's in the sailing world has, because right now on the boat, you have the person driving the boat, a tactician, and then you've got a bunch of grinders.
Yeah.
On a traditional boat that goes slower, you've got a bowman, you've got a mastman, you have some tailors on both sides, you've got the guy that's doing the backstays. So there's a lot more crew activity on the slower boats, and there's a lot less crew activity on these faster boats. And so the theory is that you can get athletes to do the grinding and you can have sailors do the sailing.
Okay.
And New Zealand had a bicyclist on the boat, and there's an article that he was learning how to sail as he's on the most high-end sailing event in the world.
That's fascinating. Fascinating.
So let's go over some chronological dates for a minute, Charles. When is the next America's Cup?
2024 fall in Barcelona. So the deadline to sign up for the America's Cup is in May.
How do you qualify? I'm sorry, how do you qualify for the Cup?
So this is what's so funny about it. The qualifications are based on technical things, and you have to have, it is not a sailing qualification, it's a technical qualification. So they're not going to ask you.
What does that mean? Yeah.
It means that you have to have the right organization set up to get in. You can't just come in without the organization. So that's why we're putting it together now. So by the time we apply, they'll look and tick it off and say, you've got it all.
When you
What
said,
they'll be happy about is that we're building, that we're designing, and that I've got crew formed already.
when you say it's got to be, you have to sign up and make your application by May, you're talking May of 23?
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
just this spring.
And how often is America's Cup? Is it every 2 or every 4 years?
It's typically 3.5 years, but it can vary based on a couple different things. If a team from the Southern Hemisphere wins and the Northern Hemisphere summer, then it flips because their summer is in the wintertime. So you're dealing with a 6-month variant. So typically 3.5 years.
So you won't at all be dissuaded if you don't make it to this next America's Cup. This is a long, not long range, like 15 or 20 years. This is something that you're flexible with, and you've got a backup plan how to use that time to make yourself better prepared for the next America's Cup.
So here's how it can work. If we were able to succeed with what we've planned out now, and we make the money that we need to make, and we start building our America's Cup boat, let's say in April, and then that boat comes out of production this time next year in the fall, September, October, then they would have almost a full year to train on that boat before the America's Cup starts. That's a long time to train if you're a good crew. Also, you have to buy an AC-40, which is a 40-foot version with only a 4-person crew. And so we're going to buy that as soon as possible after the reveal. So those are $2 million. So if you're doing those things and you track along, there's really it's not that difficult to be ready.
Charles, how much revenue do you anticipate you're going to need in order to get this thing started and move in the direction that you want it to go?
To start out, you can make $20 million, because remember, you're not going to spend $20 million in one day. You're going to spend, so if you buy a $2 million boat and you bring on crew, you're probably going to end up spending about $300,000 a month. And so you're not going to go broke if you have 20 million. And you can do as many reveals as you want, and you can splash this around, and we can take this show on the road and go to every major city and give a presentation like we just did.
And can you get Gary and I Corvettes?
Yeah.
Listen, I've got gray hair, so I can tell you, we're too old. Let's stay with the Ford Fusion. It's safer for us.
All right, that's good. Hey, this is
I'd rather go with the Corvette.
Me too.
This is a good point to end our discussion tonight, but with the caveat
Amazing.
that we're gonna check back with you. I'll go through Mitchell and I'll go through you, but we'll get you on again in December, right after the uniform reveal, and we'll talk more about this. All right?
Stan, I really appreciate it. It was nice talking with you.
All right. He's Charles Kithcart. His company is African Diaspora Maritime. And they are trying to raise money, build an America's Cup sailing boat and sail in the next America's Cup. And they're planning to do it right here in Baltimore. Charles, we thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Charles.
I really appreciate it.
Gary, for Gary Stein and Charles Kithcart, I'm Stan the Fan Charles, and we'll say bon voyage for now.
Oh,
Bon
good.
voyage. Thanks, Gary.
See what I did there? See what I did there? All
I
right,
got
good
it.
night, everybody. Don't forget, Yankees and the Astros are on TV next. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.